You're listening to the Changing Normal podcast, where we strive to outdo the old normal and reject the new normal. And now your hosts, Owen, Dan, and Ben.
Welcome to the Changing Normal podcast, episode 14. And tonight we have Ben, but no Dan. So last week it was Dan, but no Ben. And this week it's Ben, but no Dan.
Just keep swapping. We're on the side chat. We're making sure that
I'm glad at least
good one-on-one time.
I'm glad at least one of you is showing up. Otherwise, nobody would listen to this show. Just me all by my lonesome.
Oh no, there's people listening to it on Fountain. We got a boost on the last episode that you guys did.
Okay.
I think king_of_the_north. I think. Is what,
King of the North. That's a good green pepper variety, actually.
Really?
King of the North. Yeah. Okay, a little random there. What have you been up to?
Oh man, so yeah, I guess there's a lot to catch up on.
You got 2 weeks to fill in, buddy.
Okay, first week to fill in. I was visiting another office at work, and while I was there, it was an office I worked in previously. I transferred offices this spring for work, and while I was there, we got talking about stocks in the markets. One of my coworkers there, he's quite a stock market man, and
one might almost say stocky.
No. He's a few years older than I am, but he was a weapon in his day. So. But anyway, when I worked there for several years before I transferred, and while working there, that was kind of when I got started in Bitcoin and looking into cryptocurrencies, and kind of pulled him along with me for the first little bit of the ride before I really went down the Bitcoin rabbit hole and, stopped dabbling in all of the other altcoins out there. But I mean, anyway, so he's of the previous generation. So he more sees Bitcoin as like a tech stock. So some of the things that he's interested in, because he's looking for, the dollar go up scenario. So we don't have a spot Bitcoin ETF, but there's futures ETFs. And wait, is that there? Yeah.
Doesn't Canada have a spot ETF?
Oh crap, do we?
I think Canada does, but the US does not.
I'm just so used to getting hit with all of the US Bitcoin news.
Either way, it's not the same as holding Bitcoin.
No, well, because you're owning something that's connected to said Bitcoin.
Yeah.
Right. But I mean, like that's him dipping his toe in the water. So with me transferring, there were a bunch of younger, newer staff that came on, and I was just kind of chatting with them. And he got talking about how the markets were down, and obviously because Bitcoin is so such a high profile in the media, it ends up being that, like, regardless of how far the stock markets are down, if Bitcoin is down, then it's doom and gloom for everything that's cryptocurrency related.
Right.
So I was taking a little bit of ribbing there, because they're like, "Oh, you sold all your Bitcoin yet?" And I'm like, "No, I'm not going to realize a loss. No way." And but anyway, we just kind of got chatting, and one of the younger coworkers that I had there, they seemed pretty keen and interested in it. And I was like, I think I'm going to try a trick that I heard Jack Spirko talk about. I'm like, maybe in 30 years I'll regret this, but so I said, I can show you, I can literally show you right now how easy it is. All you got to do is download this wallet. So I got her to download the wallet of Satoshi, and I'm like, I'm going to send you 5 cents worth of Bitcoin, and ching, just scan the QR code, and her phone buzzed and scared her. She's like, "Holy smokes, what was that?" And we're all sitting in the office, on break there, and of course, my other coworker, who's older than both of us, he's like, holy smokes, like this is crazy, you know, like this magic internet money sort of deal. it's like you guys are aliens, you know. And I mean, anyway, so he just kind of, he's like, man, this is over my head. Like I said, well, you know, really, if you boil it down to how simple, you know, simple with air quotes around it, it is to have self-custody of it. All you really have to understand is that it's not in the wallet. And it's another, I was listening to a podcast that was talking about the terminology that we use in Bitcoin. Yeah. Did you listen to that one? The Bitcoin Audible one?
Yeah, I've heard that in a few different places where there people are kind of Bitcoin purists are like, it's not a wallet.
Yeah, that's essentially what it was.
Yeah.
You know, there's only like, you just need to have your keys or your seed phrase. You know, make sure it's not on an exchange, and understand that you're just interacting with it on the blockchain. And man, I went through a lot more information than I realized that I knew about things like, you know, it's mostly just from sitting and listening to the presentations that we've done, you know, most of the heavy lifting done by you and Dan, of course. But so then I was like, okay, so that was Lightning, and that was like a second layer. So the second layer and how that kind of works, and then integrated on top of the main layer of Bitcoin. I said, you know what, I'll show you how easy it is to do like self-custody and then like an on-chain transaction. So got her to download the Exodus wallet, and I said, so Exodus also has Lightning within it. And then I just showed her like a 1 cent transaction on that. I mean, I moved 1 cent, but there's probably a little bit of a fee underneath there.
Sure.
Which, like, you know, that's why I heard someone say one time, they're like, you know, Lightning is instant and free. And I'm thinking, no, it can't be free. And then I heard a few more people say, well, you know, near almost free.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, that makes sense. But anyway, yeah, same thing. I just said, like, you know, $5 $5 of Bitcoin. And I said, you don't have to do anything with this. You can just make sure. And I showed her how to, you know, go into your security settings and how to back up your seed phrase. And I said, you know, write this down. Don't let anyone else know that. This is how you interact with the Bitcoin that's under your address on the main blockchain. And, you know, all of that technical jargon that was just making my other coworkers' head spin.
Yeah.
So anyway, yeah, she was just like, I said, you know, the common phrase that I use, you know, drinking from the fire hose, there's just so much stuff. And I haven't heard from her since. I haven't heard from my other coworker about it since. So maybe that orange pilling session didn't go so well, but I mean, it's like
still trying to swallow it, maybe.
A horse pill.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it's like, it's interesting how each experience is different, you know, like even just that one experience, like the interactions I was having with her, trying to help her understand versus him, and how his brain was trying to wrap around it, just completely different. But I mean, all in the same interaction. But anyway, yeah, it's like, I don't know what it was in total, like $5.15, $5.50 or something like that. That I told her, I said, you know, way back when, you know, 2010, 11, 12, back when people were actually using this as a, you know, evangelism tool, you know, like they would send like $1 or $5 or $10 or whatever. But like nowadays it's worth whatever, like $40,000, like, you know,
that's right.
Not 40,000.
Well, it's like the guy who you know, spent 10,000 Bitcoin for a couple of pizzas.
Oh,
you know, that
so much. But I mean, but then on the anniversary, didn't he go out and buy pizzas with Lightning?
Oh, I hadn't heard that.
I'm pretty sure I heard that story somewhere, that it was kind of
that's cool.
Yeah, it's just sort of like, you know, because Bitcoin was so new, and then he, to celebrate Lightning, being utilized as a means of transaction and such, he went out and bought a pizza again with Lightning. And I mean, obviously it's exponentially cheaper this time around.
Yes. That's cool. That's cool.
But yeah, so I mean, I sent her my ShakePay referral code, which again, for some reason, even though she skipped the identity verification and just went with like the phone and the email, it still wouldn't let her shake. And I don't know why.
You should follow up, because sometimes what I've noticed is sometimes the referral link is not taking. Like they follow the link,
okay.
but if you don't have a referral or you haven't referred someone else, you can't shake.
Well, yeah, because I.
So we found we had to go through and put that in, get the person to put it in after, like later.
Okay. Well, I mean, like she downloaded it through the referral link, like the actual like shakepay.com/whatever my referral code is.
Yep.
And then I got a notification on my phone that said your friend has signed up.
Okay.
But then when she went to shake, it said that shaking is only available to those who have verified their account. So I'm not it's the first referral that I've done in a little while. But
I haven't heard anything about them changing that, though. It makes me wonder if maybe she hadn't actually like clicked the link in her email, or
okay, maybe that was it.
Because usually like they'll verify by sending you an email, and you have to go in and click that link in the email, right? True. So maybe she hadn't quite done every piece of every step or something. I'm not sure.
Yeah, again, I was rusty. So anyway, I left it up to her. I said, it's a selfie video and it's just a photo of your ID. It's the same as if you're opening up a bank account, like they're going to ask for your ID there.
Yep.
They, as an exchange, they have to abide by the FinTrack, financial regulations and such. But it was a bit of a rush, because I'm thinking like, don't screw it up. Like, it's actual money. But then there's also the side, it's like, holy cow, you're actually like orange pilling someone. You're using real Bitcoin to do it.
Yeah. I was going to say, why were you being so cheap and only sending her, a few cents?
Well, man.
But no, it does make a point with Lightning. It does make a point, right? Mm-hmm. Because with Lightning, you can say, see, it's not expensive. I can literally send you a penny, and it works.
Well, one of the questions that they had was that, Bitcoin's at whatever it was back then. It was like $27,000 for one Bitcoin. And they're like, well, I don't have $27,000 to buy a Bitcoin. I said, you don't have to. You can buy $1 worth. And actually, I told them about our podcast as well, and they started watching it. And I said, no, wait until I'm out of, wait until I'm gone in the building before you embarrass me. But anyway, no, it was pretty cool, and it got me thinking about how different each experience is of just talking to someone, because it was very much the technical side of Bitcoin for them. And I know between chatting with you and Dan a lot, sometimes it's the fact that a lot of people need to realize that the money that we have now isn't good. That's poor terminology. Probably
no, but
verbiage, but
no, I get what you're saying, because it is different. Some people don't understand the technology, so therefore they're nervous about Bitcoin. Some people don't understand the need for it because they don't see the problem with the fiat dollar. Right.
Yeah, that's true.
So everybody, and everybody comes at it from a different perspective, and it's really interesting to see generational gap. Where someone of a younger generation who grew up with a smartphone who has no problem downloading apps, doesn't even think twice about it.
Yep.
You were able to say, "Hey, just download this app, and I'll send you some Bitcoin." They're like, "Okay, but it's done." And you send them 2 cents in bit, Scottish in your background or something like that.
No, full English blood. You go way, way back to the Duke of Cumberland. He was actually the Duke of Cumberland is actually a very hated.
Well, now we know why. He was friggin' cheap.
No, he slaughtered the Scots. we were at a Celtic village in Nova Scotia or Cape Breton on like a field trip with mom and dad or whatever, and and she's like, the lady at the exhibit was saying, "Oh yeah," and with the Scottish, like heavy Scottish accent, she's talking about how the Duke of Cumberland came in and slaughtered all of her ancestors. and we got the stern look of, "Do not tell her what your last name is."
That's funny.
Oh yeah, no,
but yeah, no, I think I had a similar experience this past week, actually, or today, early this morning.
Cool.
Where one of the guys I work with owns Bitcoin. He has a hardware wallet, and the whole bay's owned it. Probably as long as I have, maybe longer.
Nice.
Didn't actually understand the technical aspects of how it worked. So he had no idea how it worked.
Wow.
He viewed it entirely as this is an investment, just like buying Apple or Tesla.
But he still got, wow, that's
so
I like that he actually that he went through and got a hardware wallet and keeps it on the hardware wallet while viewing it as a I've never heard of or met someone that has that view. That's really cool.
But he didn't understand. Like, he was asking me questions this morning when we were talking about it. He was like, "Well, like, how does the network? Like, what's mining? Like, how does mining work? And what do you mean? There's 6.25 Bitcoin
every 10 minutes.
Mined every 10 minutes. Like, so those technical aspects had never been explained to him, and he had never researched it. There's nothing against him. It's just he had just never researched it.
Yeah.
So it's kind of interesting to explain it to someone who actually owned it. But
this is what you can do with it.
Yeah. So anyway, it was kind of interesting to have, like you say, every single person in some ways is different.
Yeah.
So there we spent 15 minutes on what you did the week before last.
And then I chopped and sawed some wood, came second and third, and that's
awesome. You came second and third. How's that possible? You're third. Was there no third place? Was there only two of you in the competition?
Oh man, I guess I had. Well, let's see. I didn't explain that part well. So, all 12 of the pro men division, like all of the 12 athletes that made it through to nationals, one of the stipulations is if you qualify for nationals in the individual, just the regular steel timber sports competition, you also have to do the Champions Trophy. So the Champions Trophy is 4 events, 4 of the 6 steel events, and you got to do them back to back in a one-man relay format. So you go from what's called a stock saw. So you just take like a regular stock steel MS 661, make one cut with that, then you run over to your underhand block, you step, or it's called underhand, but it's horizontal. You stand on the block, you chop that through, sever the block in half, then you run back over to the same piece of wood that you did a chainsaw cut on, and then you use the one-man crosscut, and you do one cut with that. And then once you're done that, then you go over to the vertical or the standing block chop, which simulates felling a tree, and then you do that. So it's all bang, 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 back to back. That is that's the Pain Cave event. That one sucks really, really bad. I was in a whole world of hurt after the time trial. But yeah, I was really, really blessed the whole weekend. Like, it was for not having competed since 2019. I really couldn't have asked for anything better. I mean, technically, I tied for first in the individual format.
Okay.
The normal championship, I had 75 points, and Marcel Dupuis, he had 75 as well. And then it came down to the total time. So you like in hot saw, I cut a time of 7 right around 7 seconds. Marcel was like 5.9 seconds. And then in standing block, I cut a time of like 17 seconds, and Marcel was like 24. So basically, they add up all 6 event times,
Right.
and then that is how they break the tie. So Marcel had the faster of all time. So he's going to be representing Canada in the individual championships in Gothenburg, Sweden.
Nice.
So we're still waiting on the official team selection. There hasn't been any real full announcement from Steel Canada as far as who's going as part of the 4-man team for the Team World Championship, but hopefully we'll know when that is. We kind of got a little bit of an inside track, but I don't know if I'm allowed to spill the beans just yet.
Right. Okay. you could tell me after the show.
Yeah, but that was, and then went on a bit of a stay away from home. No cell service, no running water, no electricity. Cabin in the woods. And got to spend some time with my wife and my boy, and
nice.
Had a lot of fun.
Awesome.
So, yeah, no, it was a good 2 weeks, but I definitely, like, Thursday night when we got to the competition site, I'm looking at all the gear and the fact that we still have to check in and go down to the site. I'm thinking, oh no, I'm going to miss recording. Then you guys were like, oh no, we'll do it Friday night. And I'm thinking, no, because I was helping Matt with, I was his assistant for the competition. And then I also helped one of the female competitors for the women's championship. So it was 10,
you're busy.
10:30 I was back to the hotel alone. So anyway, yeah.
Well, it happens.
Glad to be back. So now that I have let our listeners know that I'm a narcissist, what about you? How was your week?
I didn't do anything. Well, I did lots of stuff, of course, always busy, but the main thing, I think I fell down the rabbit hole this past weekend and week.
Another one?
Yeah, I'm so bad for this. Someone needs to save me from myself, because I don't seem to have the ability to say no to new hobbies. So I guess I'm going to go ahead and start keeping bees.
Oh, sweet.
So I've wanted
no pun intended.
Yeah, that's right. Well, hopefully it is. I've wanted to do it for years, and just that I've always had a problem with the traditional what's called it's called an American hive, also known as I can't remember the name. Lens cloth or whatever it's called. Anyway, it's got some special name. Anyway, I've always had a problem with those hives, even though I've never worked with them. But in theory, because I'm a theorist, and I should have been an engineer. I don't know why I didn't choose that career path. But you hear about all these people, bees died and it didn't overwinter and it was too cold, and I got to insulate them, and I got to do this and that and the next thing, right?
Yep.
I was like, there has got to be a better way to do this. And then I watched videos, and you got to wear all this equipment because you're constantly, every time you check your bees, you're breaking your boxes all apart, taking the tops, the supers, the honey supers off, and getting into the brooders and looking for the queen and checking for brood and all these different things. But every time you do it, you got to basically tear the whole hive down top to bottom. And you get the bees all riled up, and And I was like, there has got to be a better way to do this. So it's always was one of those things where I was really hesitant to do it. And my kids are interested. At least one of my daughters is interested. But like, she's not going to be able to pick up a 80-pound box of honey, like honey super. Like, she barely weighs that much herself. So she's strong, but she's not going to pick that up. And that's just not practical. So I discovered a different type of hive, and I started going, like, researching it, and I am 100% sold on this other type of hive. And now I want to do it just to prove I can do it.
Tell me I can't do something. I'm going to do it.
Exactly. And so these hives, actually, this one design that I found, it's like a hollow core design, and the core is, instead of, so a lot of people will insulate their hives with foam,
right?
Styrofoam, but the problem is it doesn't breathe, and so you get potential for moisture buildup. Well, that's more dangerous for the bees than the cold is, even.
Okay, yeah.
And so this double layer and hollow core hive box is filled with raw wool.
Oh.
And so you get a really high quality natural insulation, which works both in the summer and the winter. So it keeps them cool as well as keeps them warm.
Yeah.
It also isn't going to build up moisture and hold moisture in. It's still going to breathe, unlike styrofoam or tar paper or something like that, which is a common. Plus, you have the extra thickness of wood.
Right.
There's a couple versions of this hive. One is just solid wood. It's about 2 or 3 times the thickness of a regular hive. If it's solid wood, or you can do this insulative type, which is what I'm going to do. And the other thing is, it's a horizontal hive, so you don't stack boxes. Everything, all your what are they called? The frames that would normally fit down inside the box go in just side by side along the entire width of the hive.
Okay.
So without disturbing the bees, at any time you can open the top and pull out a frame. And you can pull out any frame.
Wow.
Without unstacking or moving any of the other frames. So if I want to check my brood, I can go, you can usually approximate where the brood probably is. You can pull that out. You can check, there's capped brood there, whatever. I'm going to go over 3 or 4 frames. Oh yeah, look, well, there's no more brood here. They're, storing honey. You can kind of check, oh yeah, they've got some honey stored up. I can take that off or leave it or whatever. Or, I've got, queen cells forming. I need to split this hive, or they're, whatever. But you can do all that without completely tearing down the whole hive to check things.
I really like that.
I really like it too. And I watch some of these videos, and they don't even wear equipment. And the bees don't care, because the bees are all held, like contained inside the hive at all times. And you're just pulling one frame out, checking it, putting the frame back. And none of the other bees are disturbed by doing that.
Wow.
So it's pretty neat the way they're doing it. And of course, I'm also going to do some things that most beekeepers don't do, which is I'm not going to take off anything except surplus honey. Okay. So no feeding sugar syrup to the bees. I'm not going to take all their honey and then, feed them refined sugar in the fall so that they can try to make it through the winter. Like we know what sugar does to our own immune systems. Imagine what it does to the bees' immune systems, right? I think that's a big part of why the bee populations are so devastated by disease these days. And then we're going to do, and then I'm also going to do, one of the other things about these frames is that they're deep. They're narrower than a traditional frame, but they're much deeper, which is designed specifically to mimic typical size of hollow trees. that bees will tend to nest in.
Well, I mean, that makes sense. A lot of, well, okay, just going back to the Wright brothers when they designed the plane. Like, I mean, they drew inspiration from the critters and the birds that flew.
Yeah.
Right. Looking at the shape of their wings. So, I mean, it makes sense that if this
Yeah.
is what happens in nature, you know,
That's
the
right.
way it was designed, then it's something that we're looking to benefit from if it's working out of that form and design of nature. Like, yeah, that makes total sense to me.
Really fits into a permaculture model, because instead of trying to fight against and force nature into, you know, my box, I'm going to just try and work with what nature's already designed and try to, you know, utilize that. So because bees tend to work at the bottom, they cluster at the bottom and work their way up, eating honey stores in the winter.
Right.
Because they're much deeper frame, they can actually store a lot more honey in the top part of the frame. Whereas in a narrower, like a shallower frame, they're not able to do that. They cluster in those frames, and all their honey stores is in another box in a traditional hive on top. And they actually have a gap they have to bridge, like an actual gap between the frames. And in the middle of winter, that's very difficult for cold bees to do. And so you end up with bees. And I've heard stories of like, well, I have all these dead bees. They starved to death over winter, but there was an entire super of honey on top.
Yeah.
Well, it's because they couldn't get to it. So because these are all stacked horizontally, I mean that the frames sit vertically in a horizontal hive, but because they're longer, anyway, they're just more able to do what they naturally do. And then the other thing I'm going to do is try to catch wild swarms.
So
instead of bringing bees in from, you know, across the country and buying a nuke, I'm going to try. I may pick one up from a local beekeeper if I can find one, but I am going to try to catch some wild swarms because they're going to naturally be more resistant, disease resistant, pest 100%. Resistant, you know, more hardy. They're also a little nastier too, but I'll take that trade-off for surviving the winter, you know.
So, did you guys mention this? Did you mention this last week in the episode? Or
I did mention it briefly. Yeah. But that was just the beginning of the rabbit hole, and I'm at the very bottom.
So the reason is to decrease reliance on what is the just like that poof gone system.
Yeah, certainly
that we rely on.
That is part of it. I mean, obviously that's the side effect. That's the benefit for me. It also gives me a pretty good base of pollinators right on the property. So I'm less reliant on the natural pollinators, which usually is enough, but this would actually give me like my own cult. Like I'm going to set up my bees right in the orchard. Yeah. So there'll be tons of pollinators for in the greenhouse and the orchard and, you know, all the berries and everything else. So it's like anything in permaculture, you want to have multiple things happening.
Yeah.
With every piece that you put into your system and into your design, it needs to do multiple things.
Yeah.
But because I'm going to do it naturally, the only honey take that I will have is surplus that they don't need for winter.
Right.
So if there may be some years where maybe it's an off year and I won't get much honey, or if any honey, because I'll leave it all in the hives for the bees.
Right.
So that they have their own natural food source. So.
Yeah. Oh, that makes sense. And definitely one of the things I picked up from from last week's episode when I listened to it, and you kind of alluded to it there, was that it's not like a one-dimensional aspect. You know, there's not really anything in permaculture or in that mindset that is one-dimensional. works multiple ways. It's not just, you're not just bringing bees in so that you can get honey. Like it's
That's right.
multifaceted.
Yeah. And that's the traditional approach, right?
Yeah.
Oh, I bring this onto my property and it has this purpose and I give it inputs and it gives me an output.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of saying, well, I bring this in and I give it inputs and this is one of the outputs.
Right.
But there are multiple other outputs that I'm going to try to utilize.
Yeah.
I'm for that. So
I
anyway.
like it.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Well, there, we better get a move on because we're.
And here I was worried. I'm feeling out of the loop. I was telling you before we got on that I was like, oh man, I'm nervous. Like before we recorded the first show, I'm just so out of the loop, out of practice.
Yeah. Oh, you're fine. So we didn't know what to do for the crypto corner this week. So we thought we would kind of just hit a bunch of topics, news stories, in crypto. So maybe we'll just burn through these real fast and then we'll get on to the main topic. So yeah, Michael Saylor steps down as CEO of MicroStrategy Solutions.
Yeah, he's no longer the main head. He brought in someone else. Can't remember the gentleman's name, but basically what Saylor wanted to do was be more in control of overseeing the Bitcoin hodling for MicroStrategy, and
that does not seem like a full-time job to me.
Well, I saw some comments that they're like, oh, he's going to be the next Jack Dorsey. And people are like, we don't need another Jack Dorsey. We need Michael Saylor to keep being Michael Saylor.
Yeah, that's right.
But they compared it to, because Jack Dorsey, he was CEO, or he was the head of Twitter for a while, stepped down. He got the old laser eyes and started laser eyes. For those who may have seen it or didn't understand what it was, it's basically just people who have been orange pilled and have fallen down the Bitcoin rabbit hole. And then, in their profile picture, they've got laser eyes and
highly focused.
Yeah. Okay. That I just knew that it was correlated to Bitcoin and that whole rabbit hole. So anyway, Jack Dorsey has been building a lot more implementation with Lightning and building a lot more functionality through Lightning, whereas I believe Michael Saylor is a lot more just the sound money, Bitcoin as energy principles and things like that. So more along the main chain for Bitcoin. But
he's not a developer in quite the same way that Jack Dorsey and the Strike guy
Square.
was his. No,
Square.
what's the
Mall versus Strike?
Yeah, so like that guy's he's a developer. Dorsey's a developer. Like those guys are software developers. They want to build practical implementations. Where I see Michael Saylor is more of a, not philosophy. He's very practical, but he's more on the investment side of things. Yeah, and sound money side of things and macro. View of side of things, very, very much. I've listened to a few interviews he's done the last week or two. They're always quite interesting.
That's one resource that I've not yet delved into, but probably should have at this point, is the Saylor series on what is money, and it's like a 17-part interview.
Oh wow,
Michael, it's massive. It's like 25 hours or something like that. I'm telling you, man.
Well, I'm not quite doing that. Yeah, that's wow.
I think I haven't listened to it yet or checked it out, but I think Spearco did up a bunch of clips on Fountain from the Saylor series. So like the high points of it. So maybe the condensed 25-minute version of them.
Well, Saylor is a slow talker, so that might be why it's 25 hours. But
Yeah, 1.5 still doesn't solve it.
Yeah. So anyway, I don't really have, that's not going to affect much in Bitcoin, I don't think, but maybe he'll have more time to do more interviews. I don't know.
It's always interesting listening to him talk about it.
Oh yeah. Yeah. He's got a real good perspective.
Yeah.
Real good perspective. So, in other news, Solana got hacked.
Oh my land.
So this was still like going on last I heard. I don't even know what the final conclusion was, but Solana is like an altcoin that was supposed to be like the better Ethereum kind of
Another platform for decentralized applications and all of the Web3 and things like that to build off of.
Yeah.
I think they even have NFTs too, but like,
yeah,
I got a notification on my phone and it says, breaking news, Solana currently being hacked. Check out this wallet being drained. And I'm just looking at them going, oh my land, here we go. Another one's hitting the fan.
So what was it their own wallet that, like, what? I don't understand what got hacked. Was it like an exchange or what?
I'm going to take a stab in the dark because I don't know a lot about Solana. They kind of started pumping after I got out of most of the altcoins I had.
Yeah.
So I was kind of like, oh, interesting. Another, quote unquote Ethereum killer.
Yeah.
But I would imagine it's a proof of stake. I would imagine that there was a bit of an ICO, initial coin offering, so that there's probably a large amount of Solana staked in a handful of wallets. And I would imagine that those wallets which hold the governing kind of say in, and this is all just speculation on my part, just based on what I've seen and heard in the altcoin landscape.
Right.
I would say one of them is getting.
So it was individuals, but it wasn't individuals' wallets. It was individuals who had staked their soul coins or whatever they're called in the governance model. So they staked it with Solana. Is that how that works? No, because usually you hold it in your own. You can't.
Yeah, see, I haven't figured out how to do that with Ethereum. So the other proof of stake, well, there's two, I guess, that I hold. And the only reason I have them is because it was at a suggestion of someone that I was listening to at the time. But Algorand is proof of stake, but that stays in my self-custody. I just commit them that I'm going to maintain that. And then the other one is Atom or Cosmos, and that stays in my own self-custody wallet again.
Right.
So if Solana is similar to those, then I would imagine that it's probably some people who were in on Solana early before it really took off. And similar but not exactly. Like the people who were initially started mining Bitcoin, they're mining Bitcoin, they're getting 50 Bitcoin every 10 minutes.
Right.
Bitcoin is cheap. So like the guy who bought the pizzas for 10,000 Bitcoins,
right?
It hurts me to say that, but I sure hope it was good pizza. But in the same way, when Solana would have been in the infantile stages, it would have been easy to acquire a lot of it. And while it may have been, again, I'm just shooting from the hip here because I haven't actually looked deeply into this, but I'd imagine it's probably people who just had, or an individual, or because it said it was a wallet that was getting drained. So, but that was the headline that I read, and I was
I didn't look too much more into it. I just saw it was a really big number, but I don't own any Solana, so I was like, okay, well, whatever.
Bitcoin, or privacy coins.
And I guess the other big news is the Ethereum merge is happening or supposed to happen in the next couple days. I think I heard in like 5th or 6th of August. So we'll see.
It's been so long coming. It's like, Here we go again.
Yeah. So that interests me more than anything else we've talked about, just because I do hold some Ethereum.
Yeah.
It's not staked in any way or anything like that. Well, I can't yet anyway because it's not proof of stake coin yet. But it'll be interesting to see if that goes off relatively smoothly, if the value starts creeping up on it. If a large amount is burnt with that sort of merge, and will that drive up the price? They're saying it's not going to affect gas fees or any of that kind of stuff. But I don't know. I just want to see it go up so I can sell it and buy more Bitcoin.
Yep.
That's kind of where I'm at. Even though Ethereum's probably not going anywhere. It's like one of the altcoins that's probably never going anywhere. But
yeah. I mean, it's probably going to get the crap regulated out of it because it's technically a security under the US.
Well, that's the thing, eh? Like so many of these alternate coins that are going proof of stake, that's potentially what's going to happen.
Oh, man, I heard. Oh, what did I hear? Ding, ding, ding. It was someone with the SEC, Gary Gensler, I think. He was talking about how most of cryptocurrencies, if not all of them, are securities and illegal at that. I mean, like,
yeah,
I'm just like, that sounds like FUD to me, but
well, it is FUD in some ways. In other ways, he's probably right. I mean, a lot of them do fit the definition of a security, and something like Solana getting hacked and having, a large amount of whatever you want to call it, collateral or investment lost by individuals, that often can be used as an excuse by regulators to go, see, we need to regulate this. We need to have rules in this. We need to be involved. For good or bad, that's often what happens. You can like it or not like it. That's where we're headed.
Yeah.
The unique thing about Bitcoin is who are they gonna regulate? You know what I mean? Like it's truly decentralized, unlike anything else in the sphere, in the crypto world.
Yeah.
And Bitcoin is already defined in the law as digital property.
Yeah. Yeah. That was one thing that we talked about in the Orange Pill experience I had. They're like, well, why can't they just wipe it out? I said, well, they could, except for that one node that's running off grid on solar and battery power. And then
somewhere in Kazakhstan.
Someone else figures out how to get a computer up and running around running outside of the parameters that they had to regulate it. And then Bitcoin just keeps rolling.
Yeah.
Nothing.
Yeah. So anyway, it's kind of interesting. So we'll be watching that, and I'm sure that's something we'll talk about in the future.
Oh yeah.
We see how that goes down. So let's move on real quick to the main topic. Spend 5 minutes on that.
2 hour show.
Yeah. Oh man. So we thought this is like anyway, this could be a really depressing segment. So we hope everybody's feeling all right, because you might not be at the end of this.
Nah, but the normal part of life is to just rely on hopium. You're gonna need a good dose of reality every now and then. Change the normal that way.
That's true.
Well, but it's like what Jack Spirko says, helping you live a better life in case times get tough, or even if they don't, right? Like that's the whole part of, or that's a large part of what the changing normal is about.
Mm-hmm.
It's realizing that what is normal now is not going to stay normal.
That's right.
And it's not going to be a good normal, even in, what may be the near future. Yeah. And that was a very sobering thought for me today, thinking about after we had chatted about what we're going to chat about for, the topic tonight, it's just like, oh yeah, okay, better grab my bootstraps and pull myself up and get rolling on this. But
yeah, well, and I think it's the key part of that is the change part of it. So things are changing all the time in the world around us, and we just need to be ready to adapt with it, because if you don't roll and adapt with it, you get left behind, or you get forced into a box you don't want to get forced into, figuratively or literally.
Yeah. And then things get scary.
Exactly. Because you haven't thought of, either deliberately or through ignorance, you haven't thought ahead and prepared for what you could prepare for.
Right.
So today's main topic, we're going to kind of touch on, I don't think we're going to do this justice. Certainly, this is not going to be a comprehensive discussion.
If Dan was here, we may have to get Dan to touch on the philosophical aspects of this one.
we would have to do a two-parter if Dan was here.
Oh, just get him to listen to the main topic and then say, okay, come back with your
that's
thoughts.
right. That's right. Maybe he can send in some listener feedback.
Yeah.
It's pretty bad. We got to start like importing our own listener feedback. I'm going to start making some like fake accounts here.
Oh, burner accounts.
This week, burner accounts. Yeah. So we can have some listener feedback. So the question we're asking is, are we headed into a depression
or recession?
Sure.
Or are we there already?
Well, we can even talk about what does that mean. I mean, that's a whole topic in of itself with the changing of terms. Right. So an interesting historical fact, they never used the term depression before 1929. Speaking about economics.
Right.
It was called, before that, it was called a panic.
It was called a panic. Really?
Yes. Well, because they were speaking mostly about stock markets, right? And so, stock market goes into a panic, with ups and downs and things like that.
Right.
And so the president at the time said, well, we can't call it a panic. We don't want to call it a panic because that's just going to create more panic.
Let's call it a depression.
So let's call it a depression.
That is so much better.
Right. And so it was, obviously famously known as the Great Depression.
Right.
And then, fast forward 50 years to 70s, 80s, 90s. And what did they call it? They didn't call it a depression because that had association with the Great Depression. And so we don't want to start a panic by calling it a depression. So we're going to call it a recession.
Well, this is like,
now they're trying to redefine what a depression is.
Yes, exactly.
Right.
Like, well, we're not technically in a recession. Like, a recession is, it's just like, okay, blah, 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 blah. It's if you're starting to dance around the topic, then we're probably at said topic.
Exactly. And so, this is a pretty common thing with leftists and, certain political wings is we don't like the terms because it makes us look bad. So let's redefine the terms. Let's redefine the meaning of the words and spin it into, something that makes us look better. And so that aside, are we headed into a depression? Like we know we're in a recession. I think people know in their bones we are in a recession economy, no matter whether we technically are or not. And technically we are by the government's own definition. And I think people feel that, but are we actually in a full-blown depression, full-on heavy recession? And by that, I mean worse than 2008 type of recession. And if that is the case, what is that going to look like? And what should we be preparing for?
Well, I saw a bar graph or something like that a month or two ago, and it was talking about, kind of showed the uptick of what things looked like before the 2008 dip, and then utilizing, and that was just so you know, it was only about an inch high, and the dip was about a half inch deep, and then the line continued for another 8 inches, another 10 inches, and they're like, this is where we're at.
Yeah.
And you thought the 2008 was bad. So
was that government spending? Or what was that graph for?
it could have been. I honestly, I just saw that and I went, holy crap, that's not good. And then in my rather naive mind, I was like, okay, cool. We'll just keep on keep on going and make sure that things are in as good a shape as they can be. And now I'm like, definitely should have at least read what that graph was about.
Yeah. I think I've seen a similar graph to that. And I think it was like government spending as like to combat recession. So, because like modern economics is based on velocity of money. And so if there's no velocity of money in the economy, then there's shrinkage in the growth of the economy. And because the economy, our current modern economy with fiat money, is a giant Ponzi scheme, whereas if you don't have growth, you are falling behind. Your growth has to beat inflation.
Yeah.
But the problem is when that doesn't happen, what does the government do? It uses mechanisms, you know, through selling bonds and like, you know, all these things. So we don't need to get into all of that, but through all of those things to try to create money, to inject money into the system, to create an unnatural velocity of the money package to stimulate growth, right? That's what a stimulus does. They're trying to stimulate growth, but of course that creates more currency, which inflates even more, and it's a nasty, increasingly steep spiral that it puts us into. So now we've got a situation where, of course, they're raising interest rates.
Yep.
Inflation is out of control and does not seem to be slowing down despite raising interest rates. And
like my mind wonders how to get the true number for the inflation. Like, what's the math behind it to get what the inflation is? Because we know they're not telling us what the true inflation rate is.
Well, so when they say, oh, the inflation is, 7%, they have a few specific key items that they use to calculate that. And if the number spikes too high, they have in the past dropped that item, that commodity or whatever, out of the calculation because it makes it look so bad.
Right.
So, for example, they would take, the cost of food, the cost of fuel, I don't know, there's probably a few other things, the cost of going to the movies. I don't know. They pick a few things and they say, okay, what's the inflation rate on these? They average it out. Well, that's the inflation rate.
Right.
But each of those items, but you look at gas, you go, well, gas is a 50% inflation rate in some parts of the country.
We're going to drop that outlier.
Exactly. Yeah, that's right. And that's what they do to make the number look better. But if you actually totaled every single item or looked at items individually, the inflation rate, that 7% isn't actually a true representation of the everyday costs for the average person. Yeah. Because I'm not out buying a boat. And so if they're using boats as part of their inflation rate calculation and the inflation rate on boats is only 0.5%, it's
going to skew the data.
That's going to skew the data. And most people aren't out buying a boat, but everybody's buying food and gas and housing and, things like that. So that's kind of how they use to calculate that inflation rate. That's why it's pretty safe to say, oh, it's 7%. I mean, that's pretty bad, but it's the fact that, food is up 30 or 40% and fuel is up 50% and, all these other things are actually specific things are up more, but just because they don't calculate into the official number, they can make it look better than it is. So
they drop the outliers that are the everyday needs of
yeah,
everyday citizens, and they're calculating inflation on the boats.
Yeah, exactly. So we're into this decline of growth, increase of interest rates, which slows the velocity of the money even more.
Right.
Inflation through supply and demand issues doesn't seem to be like the natural shortages of supply and demand seem to be still there.
Yeah.
And yeah, so all of those things are sort of making a perfect stagflation type of scenario. It sort of sounds like a depression to me.
I'm getting depressed. Just kidding. But
yeah, I mean, I think we're seeing it. We're still we're at the cusp of it still, and I don't even think we've seen the effects of it. We're seeing a little bit if you look really hard. But I mean, like 6 months ago in the States, you couldn't people couldn't find anybody to work.
Right.
Exactly. There was no materials and no workers, and now I'm hearing all of a sudden it's like bang, lots of materials, lots of workers, no work. You know, if you look at home construction and things like that, because nobody's borrowing money because the inflation rates or the interest rates going up.
Yeah.
You know, so that has a pretty significant ripple down in the economy.
Well, so does that mean that because I've heard the term hyperinflation thrown around a bit, and it's generally in like, you know, a press conference and White House or whatever, and it's someone who's a mouthpiece and probably is just reading off a sheet answering this question, or, you know, pulling it out of thin air. But I've also heard some people who have a bit better head on their shoulders say hyperinflation isn't really here. You know, when you see hyperinflation, you're really going to know it. And so,
well, that's right. And because like hyperinflation, I'm sure, and I don't know, I forget exactly what the number is. I remember hearing it once, you know, what you have to hit as far as a percentage in order for it to be considered hyperinflation, like true hyperinflation. Okay. But if you look at examples like Venezuela and Argentina and places like that, and you go, like, those people have actually seen hyperinflation where, you know, like famously in Venezuela, it was cheaper to wipe your butt with the money than it was to wipe it with toilet paper, you know, because the money was so worthless because they had so much of it. It just was literally blowing around the streets. It was so worthless.
Yeah. All right.
You know, so like that's an example of extreme hyperinflation. We're probably headed there because the Fed can't keep going on this path indefinitely. They can't keep raising interest rates to try and bring down the inflation rate indefinitely.
Well, would the cascading effect of that not be people like realize it, as more and more people realize that, hey, XYZ is inflated ABC percent, you know, we're just really going to cut spending. Therefore, the stimulus is not going into the economy. Therefore, we bring on the recession ourselves without the Fed actually having to declare it? Or is that just the regular domino effect of?
Well, one of the big dominoes, of course, with an increase in interest rate is the housing market crashes.
Oh, yeah, that's right. We've been on a bubble for a while.
Well, because when the interest rates, people unfortunately often borrow, whether they, you know, to the limit of what they can, maybe out of necessity, maybe because the bank lied to them and say, hey, this is, you know, interest rates never been lower, you know, you should, and then interest rates go up by 4 points over the course of a year. over the course of 6 months. And then the rate they had locked in comes due, the end of their mortgage renewal. And all of a sudden they're underwater on their house.
Yeah.
Nobody's buying homes. So the value starts to drop. So now they've actually borrowed more than what the value of their house is worth.
Oh, man.
And so you get in this really nasty place in the housing market where you see, like we did in 2008, though that was even more complicated due to how those mortgages were owned by banks. But you get in a situation where, people start losing their homes, and then they're not spending any money on anything except where to live. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so the ripple down goes all the way through society where, companies stop hiring because they're not sure what's going to happen. And then all of a sudden people aren't buying as much. And so you get in this really nasty downward spiral. And the only option for the government is stimulus, is push more money into the economy to blow money out there for people to have so that they can then spend it to increase the velocity in the economy. Businesses get business because people have the money extra to spend. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's the only option. That's the only option the Fed has. The question is, how long can they kick it down the road?
Right.
How long can other countries in the world kick it down the road? Because remember, the US is the least affected by
Closest to the money,
the inflation.
Yeah.
Because they're closest to the money printer, so they are affected the least by inflation. Every other country in the world, with a few exceptions, is affected by inflation. And so you've got places like the European Union is teetering right now on the brink of collapse. Like,
is that a bad thing though?
Well, from an economic perspective, it is because combined with the energy crisis with Russia and your war in Russia and Ukraine, we haven't got into the food shortage issue. But
the natural or the so-called accidental food shortage?
Well, I think both. I think there is a legitimate crisis coming.
Mm-hmm. I agree. I just, kind of coincidental that there's like 20 different food plants all burning down similar times.
Yeah, I don't know what to think about that. I've not seen a whole ton of evidence to support any conspiracy there, but
I'll go on the conspiracy side of that one then.
But I think just the fact that, okay, we can get to that in a minute, but I think that, if Germany falls, or even some of these other countries, if Italy, Greece, Spain, all these countries are teetering on the edge of financial ruin with an economic downturn. And if that happens, they're going to probably leave the EU.
Yep.
And if they default on their loans to basically Germany, who's basically financed the entire continent of Europe at this point, if they default on their loans to Europe or to Germany, like, that's going to be a cascade event that's going to bring down the EU. So anyway, so I think it's pretty safe to say we're probably in a depression that they're gonna. The Feds will try to push it, kick the bucket as long as they can and as far down the road as they can.
Mm-hmm.
But it's going to mean them going back to printing money, and they're going to print more than ever because they're going to have, the pendulum is swinging, and every swing it's swinging further and further and further, and we're getting more and more extremes, and they have to go to more of an extreme to correct it,
right?
To try and correct it, to get the momentum to stop and go back the other way.
Mm-hmm. True.
So then the food shortage issue, of course, Ukraine is the breadbasket of Europe. That's often been said.
Yeah, exactly.
And then Russia is the fertilizer basket of the world. Not
right
entirely, but in large part. And like big ag or not, it feeds a lot of people.
Yeah.
And so I think we don't have time to go into all of the details and the cascade events surrounding that. But people that study this sort of thing and are actually pretty trustworthy on it, from what I can tell, are like, yeah, you think this year is going to be bad, next year is going to be a humanitarian disaster. And we may not see it because first world country, very exactly. Wealthy, all of that sort of stuff. The third world countries are going to get hit devastatingly hard. I think like Sri Lanka is a good example of that right now.
Yeah, that's true.
But some people were estimating like 500 million people dead.
Wow. Oh my, what? That's a travesty.
Yeah. So there's a lot of stuff going on here, and we haven't even talked about the aliens yet.
I was just about to say the fun part of this one.
That's when we find out that Satoshi was actually an alien.
That's why none of the Bitcoins moved out of his wallet, because he's off planet and
that's right.
Doesn't have internet.
Oh, so yeah. I mean, how many other things you want to hit here?
I mean, we're already seeing stock market volatility. We've got, especially Canada's government is overreaching. It's probably one of the worst overreaching governments in the world. So full blown totalitarian.
Yeah.
I
think when all of this sort of stuff starts to come to a head over the next year or two, then we're going to start seeing the social unrest. That'll start, of course, in the places that are already. I mean, we're already seeing some of it in different countries, but we're going to see even more of it. Moving from poor countries to rich countries. I suspect it's going to be the direction it goes.
Left Behind, Revelation.
It's interesting that traditionally the solution to this was war.
Yeah, I saw that in the show notes. I'm thinking, why is war? And then it clicked. I was like, holy smokes! Yeah, that's right.
If you can create a war that then gives you an excuse to ramp up all your production in a war effort, you then have something to actually spend that money on instead of just giving it out for free.
Right.
You also nationalize people's passions and behaviors. Right. So now all of a sudden it's, USA, USA, it's you gather people, together. Instead of dividing a population, you try to pull them together against a common enemy. Right.
Right. Yes, exactly.
And that's why you see the propaganda campaigns on both Russia and the Ukraine. They're trying to pull their people together against a common enemy.
Yep.
Many argue that is the factor that pulled the U.S. out of the Great Depression, was the war effort, World War II, and their heavy involvement in that.
Yeah, but then you got the gold debasement and then the move away from gold standard. And was it really worth it? Aside from the lives lost?
Absolutely. No, I'm not saying it was a good thing. I'm just saying that the Great Depression could have continued on a great deal longer. Yeah. If it hadn't been for that really sparked the massive spending in the U.S., which basically took all that prosperity from the war effort and
Injected it right into
injected it, and then it kept on rolling. And, we've had ups and downs, but we're in many ways still seeing some of that today. I mean, it's been the last half of the last century was really a golden age in the United States and Canada, places like that, as far as prosperity. But yeah, I'm not saying that's a good thing. I'm not saying we want to have a war. We definitely do not. Just saying that's been a solution in the past.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean, we know the one thing they probably that they don't want to do, which is restructure the economy on a sound money standard or any other standard, because that not only does it philosophically and practically take away their power, excuse me, it's a lot of pain to get there.
Yeah.
It means a great deal of economic hardship for everyone. And most governments don't have a population that has the stomach for that.
Right. Well, it'll level the playing field, literally level it, and then everyone would start from building block ground zero.
Yeah.
And then starting to run off of in theory, the best way to do it would be off of a sound money, something that,
I think it would be neat to see a move best case. Okay, so let's move into solutions. Let's make this practical for people. We've given people enough doom and gloom. I think. So let's look at since we're on that topic, the money system. A couple options. So the government basically inflates the money as far as they can. When they can't do that anymore, they say, okay, we're going to restructure this. The economy's too bad. The money's too bad. Like this is the solution. We've got this new digital currency. Probably are going to use digital. Why wouldn't they?
Yep.
We're gonna basically all of your Canadian dollars or US dollars or whatever is going to be, every $5 you have is going to be worth 2 Fed coin or new coin, right?
Yeah.
And yes, everybody suffers a little bit, but this is how we can fix it, And most people, they'll probably just do it automatically through the banks. People won't even have. You won't even be able to. You won't be required to turn in your money. It'll just be that money will be worthless overnight, and your banks will automatically be adjusted to reflect the new coin. And, there you go.
Unless you use a sound money.
So that's probably the likely scenario and probably the worst case scenario, because really you're just redoing the same thing over again.
Yep.
The better scenario would be we're going to create a new currency. Could be digital, could be not, whatever. And we're going to base it on a basket of commodities.
Mm-hmm.
Gold, oil, Bitcoin.
Right.
And they're going to figure out a way to use these commodities to somehow back, the new currency.
Mm-hmm.
That's, obviously best case scenario, they go, hey, we're going all Bitcoin, but that's highly unlikely. So I could see them using a basket of commodities, because gold is, let's face it, the majority of the people that are in power and government are old fogies. They know gold, right? That's the traditional thing. So gold's going to be in there. They might try to do something on a gold standard that won't last, but I can see them using it as part of a backing of a new currency. They're going to use oil because oil is, the energy of the world, like it or not. Exactly. You could be environmentalist and not like that, whatever. That's just a fact. And, it runs the world at this point, and that's not changing anytime soon. And yeah, so they're going to use some sort of basket like that and use other things that they can manipulate. They can easily manipulate gold and oil,
Yeah.
and things like that. So that's a potential currency change when they decide they can't, inflate the dollar anymore. And I don't know when that'll be. That could be 2 years from now, 10 years from now. Like, I don't know. um, so what could you do to prepare for it?
Make sure that I have a network of people around that are trustworthy. Start small and just take the little steps, like, even if it's just starting a garden. Things that, in a broad sense, things that reduce the amount of reliance on this system that is in the infantile stages. Well, okay, let's say infantile stages, but is in the that is taking the steps towards full-blown
collapse.
Yeah. So, it's like even so far as introducing more people to Bitcoin and saying they can't get their fingers on this. The only way they get their fingers on this is if they break your door down and tell you to give it to them.
So we've talked about. Do you want to just kind of? Well, I mean, obviously, let's discount aliens, but and war, because we've talked about a lot of stuff here that is circle of concern, but not circle of influence.
Right.
So now we need to take that circle of concern, all these topics: hyperinflation, real estate, social unrest, food shortages, aliens. How do we move that into our circle of control in order to have a practical outcome that helps us live, in this changing normal? Because this is normal is whatever is going on in the moment. And so the idea of change, of controlling our change to our normal. Let's take each one of these. So hyperinflation.
So my mind jumps to utilizing Bitcoin as a hedge against inflation. There's, in a world that still runs on a fiat currency, then without a large amount of adoption of Bitcoin, it's not it's not entirely feasible right off the bat, but could be utilized as a store. I mean, it's proving itself to be a store of value.
I think you hold your savings in hard assets instead of fiat.
Right. Yeah, and we were talking before we started recording about just kind of like a diversification, right? Like not all your eggs in one basket. So like obviously you can't eat Bitcoin. so that would then lend itself to food production, self-sovereignty in that area, because we're talking hyperinflation and then food shortages. So getting to know the farmer down the road, what critters does he raise, what can you lend of value to him, if need be, to work out a barter deal or things like that. That's kind of where
these two things really work together, because you can use food as a short-term hard asset.
100%.
Right? So you can kill two birds with one stone there. You can say, well, I don't know if I really want to buy more gold or Bitcoin at the moment, but I'm definitely going to need to eat. And I know the price of that's just going up. So maybe I'm going to purchase food that I know will last for a year or two. And I'm going to stockpile it, within reason, so that I'm, hedging against the inflation in that way.
Right. So, but
but like you say, you can only store so much. So yeah, getting to know your local farmer, maybe starting a garden in the backyard. Anything you can do to hedge against the food shortage that potentially is coming. Like I say, I don't know how bad we're going to see it here. You probably will see shortages in some things and maybe not others.
Yeah.
I can see prices getting really crazy high for sure.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. So what about real estate?
Oh, I'm not.
Like people can't just go out tomorrow and pay off their mortgage. Like, if you can, great. Why haven't you done it already? But most people, that's not a realistic thing to do. But I would say that, yeah, go ahead.
Well, no, I was just going to say that this is where my brain's kind of started going. It's like, you haven't really, you've thought about it, but you haven't put steps in motion to be on the path of stepping outside of, or not stepping outside of, but stepping into being free of what this will chain you down. Well, not chain you down to, but like we're talking about how to mitigate what is coming or could be coming, who knows. But that's what my brain, like, just kind of in the early stages of realizing that, you got to get your butt in gear.
Yeah.
You got to start figuring these things out. And
yeah, I mean, one of the 5 or 6, depending on who you listen to, points of survival and prepping is shelter.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if you're in the woods, that type of survivalism, shelter is one of the 3, right? And so it's important. But what you can kind of do, if you have an option or the ability now to, maybe you can renew your mortgage early, right? Don't wait another 6 months for it to go up another 4 or 5 percentage points. Maybe you need to do some financial shuffling to make sure you're not over leveraged, so that if the value of your home drops, or whatever, that you have the ability. Maybe you need to cut some things out so that you free up cash flow from your income, so that if you do have to remortgage and the interest rate is all of a sudden 6% instead of 2% that you had before, that you can make that extra mortgage payment.
Yep.
Start getting those things in position now. Look at your own situation, because everybody's different,
Right.
Like, I was fortunate and I was able to renew my mortgage last fall, while the rates were still really low. It was since I've had my mortgage on my house, my rate has been lower every single year that I've renewed it. It's only been a couple times, because I usually I lock it in for 5 years.
Right.
So I've always locked it in for the longest period I could at the best rate I could get, for that 5-year period.
Yeah.
And this time I had a chance to actually do it 6 months early, and I did it 6 months early because I was like, because I saw this and I said, they've got to start raising interest rates at some point. They can't keep going the way they're going. I'm going to lock this in now while I still got a low interest rate before the rates start going up. So, like, obviously now it's almost too late. Like, but if you have that option, if people are listening and they're like, oh, well, bank said I could borrow 200,000, so that's what I borrowed. Well, you might be in a bit of a jam here. Start working now to try to see how you can mitigate your risk, around real estate. The other thing on the plus side of it is, if you're in a financial position and if the real estate market does crash, maybe this is the time to buy some property.
May have had that thought.
Yeah, maybe this is the time to, actually buy property when they're cheaper. Maybe it's time to get that house or that land or that apartment building as an investment property or whatever. So you can also look at the upside of it, and be prepared for that, because that's part of being prepared as well. It's not just for how do I mitigate risk on my end. It's how can I take advantage, of this downturn and actually turn it into a profit for me on the other end, because we're going to come out the other side of this one way or the other. It might be really bad, but it's not going to be bad forever.
Right. No. Yeah, exactly.
So, okay. So that's the real estate. Let's do another one here. Social unrest.
Arm yourself.
Arm yourself. Get out of the cities.
Yeah. Oh man, I was in this. It's reminded of how much of a distaste I have for cities. Over the weekend in Charlottetown. I mean, grew up in the country. That's just what I'm used to. But like, there's one way in, one way out. That kind of tends to happen a lot more in cities because you're walled in, or concrete jungle is overgrown. But
you've got a less prepared population overall.
Yeah. The mob will be worse.
Yeah.
There's a lot more general reliance. So
yeah,
aside from sticking out like a sore thumb, if you are preparing or are prepared.
Mm-hmm. I think we've seen a lot of this over the last 2 years. A lot of people realize that cities weren't the best place to be,
Yep.
And so I think the rural areas have seen this big influx of people moving, to out of the cities, out of the populated areas, for sure. Yeah, and I think working on your situational awareness is a big part of this. If you're going to be in areas, maybe because of work or whatever, where there is a potential for social unrest, like I'm not worried about mobs coming down my road. I don't live in an area that's going to be likely a big issue. I'm more likely to face the threat of, thieves, desperate people stealing things, because times are hard. Like that's more the type of thing I'm likely to face living, in the country.
Mm-hmm.
But all of those things, start improving your security, build yourself a get home bag for your vehicle, have some alternate routes planned out, get your comms in order for social unrest that affects other things. Like I'm not one of these people who says they're going to take down the internet, man. But
oh no, they totally are.
But you could have a you could have a protest that affects the functioning, in a local area of
cell towers,
communications of different types. So, so those types of things, are things to be aware of. And I know this is really broad strokes that we're dealing with, but this is kind of an awareness check for people to be like an awareness wake up call.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, war, there's not much we can do about that, really. I mean, that's pretty hard to put into your circle of control. So I don't think I have much to say on that topic. I don't know about you.
No. Nothing comes to mind right off the bat.
Stock market volatility. I mean, if you're a person who invests in the stock market, consider your portfolio. Don't listen to the financial liars that probably are managing your money. Do your research and decide where's your level of risk, and are you in short term, long term? Do you depend on this? Is this your retirement and you're planning on retiring in 2 years?
Oh, yeah, that's true.
Those things you need to not just assume that and that this is just a little blip and just hope for the best. I listened today to somebody who is talking about gold and how gold is the patterns and market trends have shown gold to be a pretty strong indicator of the market.
Okay.
And so that was quite interesting for him to talk about that. And his message coming out of it was pretty hopeful, because his view was he was a former gold bug, now Bitcoin advocate. And he was basically saying, yeah, gold is struggling right now to stay around this $2,000 mark. That's probably US dollars. He said when it sustainably can stay above that, he thinks that's going to really signal, it won't be a turnaround in the economy overall, but he said you're going to see people move more to gold. You're going to see this movement away from things more into gold even than now. And he said, and you'll wonder what's going on because Bitcoin won't do anything. It might go up a little bit, but he said Bitcoin's always lagged behind gold. So he said you'll see the gold go up, and the Bitcoin, it might go up a little bit, but it won't really do much. He said that then all of a sudden there'll be a move from gold to Bitcoin, and Bitcoin is going to go through the roof. He was predicting like 200,000 Bitcoin sometime next year.
Oh,
by the end of next year, which would make sense considering that'll be 2024 almost, leading up to the halving.
Yeah.
So there's a whole bunch of other stuff going on there. But anyway, I thought that was kind of
that's very interesting.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'd like to wrap it there. Any other thoughts?
Well, I'm sounding like a broken record here, but being able to step outside and get a fresh headspace on where you're at, I'm definitely not as prepared as I want to be. That's 100%. But being in a circle of people and having a circle of people around me that push me to better myself, better my situation, and not just doom and gloom everything. I mean, yeah, our main topic was pretty heavy, even after we said we wanted to kind of do something that was a little bit lighter and more humorous. But there's gravity in the situation. There's gravity in life. There's humor in a lot of life too. And just being able to, and this is the broken record part, is take the small, like just small steps. Don't overwhelm. And that's what I have to keep reminding myself, because my brain just runs 100 miles an hour down. Oh, I need to get all this stuff done. All this stuff, and just to, like I said, step outside, get a breath of fresh air, take that new outlook on, and get a grip on changing the normal of what is your everyday, and doing it in small steps.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously, we want people to come away from this with a little bit of hope, and I think there's plenty of potential here. Even in this, look for the opportunities. Try to position yourself to take advantage of those opportunities. Even in this, I mean, there were a ton of generational wealth fortunes made in the 30s.
Yep. Exactly.
It may not have been realized for a decade or two, but there was lots of opportunity there. It just took a little creativity and things like that to be. And so the better you're prepared for all of these sort of scenarios and situations and aspects of your life, the better able you're going to be to pivot and take advantage of those opportunities when they come along.
Yep.
So,
right on.
Yeah. So despite The depressing future, what looks like a depressing future. Just buy Bitcoin, everything will be good. No. But
don't put your emergency fund into Bitcoin.
Yeah, don't put off these things. We're really at the cusp of probably having to draw on some or all of these different aspects. And so don't put it off. I mean, I guess if I had to leave one message is times now, act now. It's never too late because anything you do today was more than you had tomorrow.
Yep.
But
more than you had yesterday.
More than you had yesterday. Yep, that's right.
Is that what it is?
That should be yes. Anything you do today. Close. Well, since tomorrow has never comes, it is more than you have tomorrow too.
That's true. Okay, technicalities. Yes. Semantics. Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, let's wrap that there. We're going to skip news this week since we sort of did news with the crypto, all the crypto talk. If you have listener feedback, you can send feedback to changingnormal@protonmail.com. You can also leave a message on Twitter or YouTube or any of our other platforms if you want to comment there or leave feedback there if you are like anti-email or something like that. Like and subscribe and follow and do whatever you can. Share us our show around if you got some value out of this and know people who may value from it, or go ahead and share around. That's what we're doing it for.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and with that, I think we'll wrap things up. And remember, create your own new normal every day.
Cheers.